their firm. So even without talking to their firm, so even without talking to each other or collusion, or without regard for anybody else, ito yung strategy, or ito yung set of strategies that will prevail, or like, or that makes the most sense. No, yun ang tinatawag na Nash equilibrium. Halimbawa dito sa sagot na to, dito sa payoff table na to, na kinopya ko lang sa isang example ng isa pang lecture. Ito ang Nash equilibrium niya ay dalawa, no, yung II at saka AA. Itong kita nyo dito sa payoff table na to, yung player 1, dalawang strategies niya, strategy I and strategy A. No, kung ano yung I and A na yan, it can be anything. It could be a price increase, or it could be, more marketing or something. No, it can be anything. Alright, so player 2 naman, ganun din ang kanya, choices niya, syempre counter behavior, counter strategy. So dito sa sitwasyon na to, ang Nash equilibrium, makikita nyo, kasi kapag ka nag-move sila from II, magpupunta sila, nag-react si player 1, nag-react siya na kapag ka nag-I yung isa, mag-A yung isa, kahit na mag-A pa yung isa, pipiliin pa rin niya yung kanyang choice na I. Ganun din naman si player 2, no? Kapag ka nag-I siya, ang choice ng player 1 naman would react as choose A. Pero kahit na ano pang maging decision ni player 1, the best for player 2 is also II. Ganun sa pareho sila. No? Player 1 and player 2 will arrive at II as their chosen strategy, kahit na ano pa ang maging reaction ng kanyang karibal. So in that case, yung II na choice is a Nash equilibrium. Ganun din yung AA. Alright? So kahit ano pang maging desisyon ng kanyang karibal, player 2 will choose AA, and si player 1, kahit ano pang maging choice ng kanyang karibal o reaction ng kanyang karibal, kapag ang pinili niya ay A, ang magiging best pa rin niya would be AA. So yan ang Nash equilibrium. Ito just to explain, to find the Nash equilibrium, examine each action profile in turn. So, as described earlier, so neither player can increase her payoff by choosing an action different from her current one. No? Kasi babae itong gumawa ng lecture na to, kaya her. Thus, the action profile is a Nash equilibrium. By choosing A rather than I, player 1 obtains a payoff of 1 rather than 0 given player 2's action. Thus, the action profile is not a Nash equilibrium. Okay? So, ganun din sa AI. By choosing I rather than A, player 1 obtains a payoff of 2 rather than 0 given player 2's action. So, thus the action profile is not a Nash equilibrium. And then sa AA naman, neither player can increase her payoff by choosing an action different from her current one. Thus the action profile is a Nash equilibrium. Sa libro, meron tayong example na ginamit, although medyo mas nakakalito yung example sa libro, which is why I looked for another example. This time pinalitan ko lang naman yung pangalan nung example nung author sa libro natin. No? So ginawa kong dalawang bookstores kasi they're engaged in a price war. Ito yung payoff table nila, at makikita nyo na ang kanyang dito sa payoff table na to, the dominant strategy is A because any other strategy leads to a loss. So dominant strategy for dominant strategy for both fully booked and national bookstore is A. Since they're both for both of them, the dominant strategy is yung A, choice A, no, yung combination A. This is a dominant equilibrium. Same situation, pinalitan lang ng author yung payoff table. So this time instead na sa kabila kasi, di ba, parang makikita natin na obvious na A is the choice, na that's a dominant strategy for national bookstore. It's also a dominant strategy for fully booked, and because they arrive at the same dominant strategy, it's called the dominant equilibrium. For this example, the payoffs were changed a little. So in this case, in the absence of collusion, both firms will choose D given the anticipated action of each other, all right, without collusion. Pero kung with collusion, however, A would be best. If they decide hindi sila hindi sila magre-react, normal price lang sila, parang nagkasundo sila na hindi sila magtataas ng presyo, the best would be A. In this case, collusion is unlikely to happen because each bookstore is trying to undercut each other. So in this case, merong context. So yung antagonistic yung dalawang bookstores, no? So they're trying to undercut each other. So yung kung nag-usap sana, hindi sila antagonistic, the normal price, they don't change their price, that would be the most ideal for them. That will generate them the most revenue. Kaya lang din antagonistic sila, so unlikely that the collusion will prevail, no? So kapag nag-normal, there's a tendency for each to cheat, no? So kaya lang when they cheat, magre-react yung isa. So kapag si National Bookstore ay nag-engage sa price war, tapos hindi nag-react si Fully Booked will lose. So kapag nag-price war si National Bookstore, malamang si Fully Booked will engage in price war ulit, so they will arrive at D. Kapag naman nag-normal price si National Bookstore, there's a big possibility that Fully Booked will try to undercut National Bookstore. So magpa-price war siya, ibig sabihin magbababa siya ng presyo, and then National Bookstore will lose, no? Kapag nagbaba ng presyo si Fully Booked. So mapupunta sila sa payoff C. So kapag nag-price war na si Fully Booked, magpa-price war na rin si National Bookstore, and so they will arrive at D. So in the absence of collusion, both firms will choose D. Kasi pag nag-normal price yung isa, magpa-price war yung isa, magre-react sa isa, price war, magpa-price war silang dalawa, and they will both end up in a price war. So their chosen set of action would be to engage in a price war. But if they collude, they will not engage in any price war at all, and they will actually make more revenue that way. All right. In this case, A is also a non-cooperative equilibrium according to the book, and it's a Nash equilibrium. Okay, now this time let's talk about the economic cost of imperfect competition. So parang, di ba, we've talked about how we don't like imperfect competition. This time we're going to illustrate why not? No, bakit hindi ideal ang imperfect competition for society? So ito yung example. Although this is an extreme case, this is a monopoly case, this same logic, the same framework can be used to explain what would happen or what would be the loss to society if there is imperfect competition. Kasi ang difference lang naman ng monopoly at saka nung oligopoly or monopolistic competition is how steep the demand curve is going to be. But any time you deviate from perfect competition, your demand curve is going to be downward sloping. Mas steep lang yung pagkaka-downward sloping niya kung monopolist or kapag fewer yung firms. Pero the closer you are to perfect, the more participating firms there are, the flatter the demand curve that each firm faces is going to be. So the closer they are to a flatter or horizontal demand curve. Kasi kapag perfect competition, the demand curve is flat. Sabihin kasi price taker siya. Kahit na ano pang maging demand, kahit ano pang maging price, the firm will supply the same, which is they will supply everything they have at that price. Okay, so ito yung example ng kapag what society could lose if you have imperfect competition. So i-compare natin siya sa perfect competition. Okay, dito sa table na to, sa graph na to, itong line na to, itong straight line na to, this one, is your P is equal to MC is equal to AC. So this is a perfect competition. Superimpose natin yung dalawang sitwasyon. So P is equal to MC is equal to AC in perfect competition scenario. All right. The downward sloping demand curve, of course, is now your monopolist. No? So ngayon, sabi natin kapag perfect competition, no? So ang ating profit maximizing condition is P is equal to MC. So dito sa graph na to, nasan yon? P is equal to MC or this one. Alright, so ito kasi the price line here is your demand curve. No? So the demand curve is your price line. Ibig sabihin, the demand curve contains all of the prices for each level of output. Alright? So yung sitwasyon that P is equal to MC, D kasi is also the price line. All the prices, no? All the prices yan. So P is equal to MC, ito yon. So at P is equal to MC, so P is 100. What is the corresponding quantity that will be produced for society? It will be 6. All right. So in a perfectly competitive, if we impose perfect competition conditions in a monopoly situation, the quantity produced by this firm is going to be 6. All right. Now, what if in the absence of forced, let's say, regulation from government, and the firm is not obligated to engage in P is equal to MC. Instead, it will use the general profit maximizing condition, which is MR is equal to MC. Alright, nasan ngayon yung MR is equal to MC sa sitwasyong ito? Ito yon. MR is equal to MC. What is the price when MR is equal to MC? Siyempre, hindi pa naman price yan kasi MR lang yan, marginal revenue. To find the price, project mo yung itong point na to pataas. So pag ganon, ito kasi ang price line, itong demand curve, di ba? So the price is 150. What's the output? The output is 3. Purahin natin yung iba. Dali lang. Paano ba ito binubura? Anyway, hindi ko na mabura. So, kapag ka monopoly, the price is 150, the quantity produced is 3. Kapag perfect competition, the price is 100, quantity produced is 6. So, if we compare the two situations, we arrive at the conclusion that the price will be higher if the prevailing market organization is a monopolist, and the price will be higher, and the quantity produced by that monopolist is less, 3, and the price is going to be lower for if the market organization were perfect competition, because the price is 100 and the quantity is more. Quantity is 6. All right. So now, how is that bad for the economy? Notice that when the price was 100, no, and the quantity was 6, so itong dalawa. So ito ang ano natin, ito ang total benefit to society. Okay? Now, kapag ka monopolist naman, ito ang benefit, no? Okay, tapos ito ang mapupunta sa monopolist. Kasi ano yan above cost. So ito yung kanyang profit. Alright. So sa ganitong sitwasyon, what was lost to society? Well, nawala yung itong part na to as a result of moving from perfect competition to monopolies. Itong part na to, which society got, alright, or consumers got, na-transfer sa monopolist yan. Kasi ito ngayon, gain naman to ng monopolist. No? Pero ito nawala. This disappeared. Alright. Now, sorry. Itong part na to, which is also part of the entire, kasi ito yung magiging gain na, total gain na yan. Itong part na to, which was lost to society, did not get transferred to the monopolist. So, natin ito ha. So itong gain na ito, ito yung gain sa society. Ito yung gain, ito yung ano natin, ito yung gain to society as a ito yung gain, ito yung ulit. Itong buong ito ang gain. Alright? Kapag perfect competition, pagka monopolist lang, ito lang ang gain. Alright? So, nawala itong portion na to, pero ito napunta sa monopolist. Pero itong portion na to, walang pinuntahan. This is a deadweight loss. Alright? Itong portion na to kasi napunta sa monopolist, napunta siya dito sa part na to na-transfer itong gain to society, gain to consumers na to, gain to society na to, na-transfer ito from the consumers, napunta doon sa firm. Alright, so ito, nawala, this entire thing, no? This box disappeared kasi nag-move tayo from 6 to 3. So nawala ito. Pero nag-gain ang monopolist na ito. So napunta siya dyan. Alright, so this is lost to society. Alright, but gained by the monopolist. Ang question natin is anong nangyari sa triangle na to? Itong triangle na to, which was lost to society, hindi naman na-transfer sa monopolist. Alright? Hindi naman siya na-transfer sa monopolist. This is loss in welfare that did not get transferred to anyone. Ito yung tinatawag na deadweight loss. Kaya dito sa notes natin, the ABE, this one, is deadweight loss. Kasi ito, alright, kasi nawala ito itong buong ito nawala as a result of moving from 6 to 3. Pero itong lower portion na to, alright, may gain naman sa monopolist which is GBAF, no, itong portion na to, gain ng monopolist, gain of monopolist yan. Alright, ito naman, loss to society. More or less, pareho sila ng size. So yung loss to society was gained by the monopolist. So from the perspective of yung kabuuan ng lipunan, nag-transfer lang yung gain from consumers to the firm. Kasi itong AE36, no, itong AE63, itong box na to, nawala, alright, disappeared. So itong AE63 na to ay benefit ng consumers na nawala as a result of moving from 6 to 3 and the price going up from 100 to 150. Alright. But the monopolist gain additional revenue naman in the form or gain profit in the form of GBAF. Alright. So itong GBAF is a monopoly gain. Ito namang E63 is a consumer law, loss to consumers. Okay, but the total loss to consumers is actually this portion, itong buong ito. Ito at least na-gain ng monopolist, pero ito is completely lost. Walang sumalo o hindi napunta yung loss na yan to anyone. Kaya ang tawag dyan is a deadweight loss. That is just loss in welfare without any other entity that gains from it. So as a result, ano lang yan, ang tawag natin dyan is loss in efficiency, no, or deadweight loss. Hindi napunta yung loss na yan to anyone, hindi na transfer to anyone. Kaya, as a result, ABE is a waste from monopoly. That's a deadweight loss. So if we move from perfect competition to monopoly or imperfect competition, there will be deadweight loss. There will be loss in efficiency. This is defined as the loss in economic welfare due to inefficiency arising from higher than perfectly competitive price and lower than perfectly competitive output. All right. This is net of monopoly profit. So the monopolist does not gain this. This is just loss to society. I mean, people will argue, bakit dapat magreklamo din tayo na ang loss to society na gain lang ng monopolist. At least kasi kung loss to society but somebody else gains that loss, we could say na it's okay, nag-transfer lang naman yung welfare from one sector to another. No? So in this case, the welfare was transferred from consumers, no, they were enjoying lower price kasi and higher output. That loss in welfare was just transferred to the monopolist as a monopoly profit, but not the deadweight loss. The deadweight loss just disappears. It's just loss in welfare that nobody gains. So kumbaga parang ano na lang yun, talagang loss to the entire society, including the monopolist. Alright, kasi the monopolist doesn't gain it anyway. So that's one illustration of how society is worse off under imperfect competition than under a perfect competition or perfectly competitive market structure. All right. So in this case, may mga pamamaraan naman daw in order to gain yung or to minimize itong loss na to. So yung tinatawag, and one approach to that is yung tinatawag na price discrimination. Price discrimination occurs when the same product is sold to different types of consumers at different prices. So dito sa sitwasyon na to, the market is segmented. So for the same good, kasi di ba there's only one prevailing price for the same good, supposedly. But there are certain goods in certain situations wherein the firm will charge a different price to different types of consumers. So this is called price discrimination. Kaya siya price discrimination kasi iba-iba ang prices depende kung sino ka, kung anong market segment ka. So ang presyo, the way that we segment the market normally is by income or by gender, or by income class, by gender, or maybe by country, or by origin, etc. Depende kung ano ang composition ng market. All right. So price discrimination is widely done for goods that are not easily transferred from low price markets to high price markets. An example nito halimbawa ay yung textbook sa States ay available lang sa States. Hindi yan basta-basta, hindi mo ma-access yan kasi nasa States. So hindi mo ma-access yung libro na yon kasi nasa States, halimbawa. So that's not easily transferred from, let's say, mas mura sa States, no, kaysa dito. Pero hindi mo naman pwedeng i-transfer agad yung, o pwedeng dalhin yung libro, hindi ka naman pwedeng bumili ng libro sa States mula sa Pilipinas. Of course, ngayon pwede na, no, kasi, pero mas matagal. At saka magiging ganun din ang presyo kasi magbabayad ka pa ng shipping. But in a more constrained situation, a textbook in the States cannot be bought by, kahit mura siya, no, hindi mo mabibili kahit na mas mura siya kasi nandito ka sa Pilipinas. Ang isa pang example is mga halimbawa ng price discrimination, yung airline tickets. So, halimbawa, meron yung, alam niyo yung piece of fare, 'Di ba yung mas mura yung ticket kapag bibilin mo ng let's say 3 months in advance, minsan nga isang taon pa. So ano ang pagkakaiba nun? Ano ang bakit 3 months in advance? Kasi ang market ng 3 months in advance would be mostly siguro students who don't have who have a lot more time to plan. Now, iba ang market kapag mas yung hindi na piso ticket yung bibilin mo, yung regular, yung malapit na sa date, no, hindi yung 3 months in advance. Kasi ang market noon ay mas urgent yung pangangailangan, hindi sila yung tipong may oras. No? So ang magkaibang market 'yon. Sino ba ang may panahon o merong pwedeng magplano ng 3 months in advance na pagbabakasyon halimbawa? It would be yung mga estudyante kasi defined ng ano niyan, ng classes, kailan ang schedule. Pero yung mga negosyante o yung mga mas hectic ang buhay, hindi yan makaka-avail ng piece of fare kasi hindi nila kayang magplano ng 3 months in advance, no? Yung sila yung may ba mga yung mga nagbibiyahe dahil for business, no? Hindi naman magiging obvious sa kanila or apparent sa kanila kung kailan sila magbibiyahe, so mas mabilis. The other, halimbawa, isa pang example sa airline ticket ay yung may business class at saka may economy class. Magkaiba ng presyo yun, isa aeroplano. To make that distinction a little less obvious, sasabihin nila, mas maraming perks yung business class. Pero yung business class is 3 times, hindi pa nga 3 times, 5 times ang presyo sa economy class. So yung dadagdag na pagkain, ang pagkakaiba lang naman yan, halimbawa ay yung pagkain ay imbis na plastic fork magiging yung talagang silverware, tapos yung mas may choices ka sa menu. But kung tutuusin mo, it's not enough to represent yung laki ng pagkakaiba ng presyo. So bakit magkaiba ang business class, ang presyo ng business class at saka ng economy class? Kasi magkaiba sila ng market. Yung business class, mga mayayaman ng kanyang target, no? So tapos ang mga economy class hindi kasing yaman o hindi kasing well off ng mga bumibili ng business class ang target. So in this case, no, sinegment ng airline yung kanyang market, no, hinati niya sa dalawa yung kanyang customers doon sa mas likely or mas kayang magbayad ng malaki by adding some perks, and then doon sa mga hindi naman makakabayad ng masyadong malaki by maintaining yung services as is. No, parang nagkaroon lang ng product differentiation ng konti yan kasi yung business class is mas maluwag ang seats, etc. But it's the same plane. No, you will all arrive at the same destination at the same time. So yan, price discrimination, isa pa yung sa utilities o sa tubig at saka sa kuryente. Pag mapapansin nyo, iba-iba ang presyo. Pag tinignan nyo yung bill nyo, iba-iba ang presyo per unit, no? Either per kilowatt hour or per milliliter ng tubig. Depende kung anong consumption mo ng tubig. Kasi ang sabihin, kapag ikaw ay high user ng consumption, mas malaking binabayaran mong per unit na tubig as opposed to mas lower user of water. Kasi ang assumption doon, yung mga malalaking kumonsumo ng tubig ay most probably affluent. Yan yung mga mayaman kasi gumagamit na ng tubig yan for other things besides yung household chores. Ito yung may swimming pool, ito yung may mga kotse na maraming kotse na kina-car wash, etc. So, by segmenting the market into different categories of consumers, the firm is able to charge a higher price for those customers that can pay or that don't mind the higher price, and lower price for those that do mind a higher price for the same good. All right, yun ang tinatawag na price discrimination. Key points to consider when it comes to price discrimination: the elasticity of the demand of the different market segments is key. Kasi which of the two types of customers is more likely to have an elastic demand curve? Yung mayayaman o yung mahihirap? Na kapag nagtaas ka ng presyo, most likely they will reduce their consumption by a percentage more than the percentage price increase. It's going to be the yung most likely that will mind an increase in price is going to be the lesser income, diba? Those will be more sensitive to price increases. So therefore, yung mga mas sensitive to price increases, hindi mo pepresyohan ng mataas. Sinong pepresyohan mo? Those who don't react to price increases or to higher prices. Yun yung mas may inelastic demand. So between the two types of consumers, lower income and higher income, inelastic or relatively inelastic ang demand ng higher income kesa sa demand ng lower income. So in this case, price discrimination will earn the firm more profit because it can charge a higher price for those consumers that have inelastic demand and a lower price for those that have elastic demand. Kasi remember, elasticity will determine if your revenue is going to rise or decline as a result of a pricing strategy. Sabi natin, kapag ka elastic demand, the better option for the firm is to reduce price because his revenue will rise faster than the change in than the percentage decline in price. But if the demand is inelastic, the better strategy for the firm is to increase price. Okay, so price discrimination, therefore, is a way to maximize profit by capturing consumer surplus. No? What is consumer surplus again? Consumer surplus is what the consumer would have paid or would have been willing to pay more. Ito example natin. Consumer surplus. Alright, di ba ito yung demand curve? Ito yung price line. Pero of course, iisa lang naman ang price na ibabayaran ng mga consumers. Let's say this is the price. So ito yung quantity. So ibig sabihin, itong itong unit na to, so let's say this is 5 unit, the 5th unit, the consumer was willing to pay up to that point, up to this price. But he or she only paid this much kasi ito yung prevailing market price. Let's say this is 50. He's only paying 50, but he's really willing to pay up to 100. So itong portion na to is called a consumer surplus. All right, this is a benefit to the consumer kasi willing sana siya to pay 100, pero 50 lang ang binayaran niya kasi yung market price. By exercising price discrimination, the firm will charge 100. So completely capturing the consumer surplus. So itong consumer surplus na to napunta sa firm. Kasi nagtaas siya ng presyo for this customer lang, no? For this type of customer lang. So the firm was able to capture the entire set or the entire length or the entire magnitude of the consumer surplus. As a result, the consumer surplus, which was supposed to be a benefit for the consumer, was transferred from the consumer to the firm. So this way, the firm is able to maximize its profit because it's able to price discriminate. Now, by charging a higher price than what is the prevailing price, let's say it's 50, and assuming that this is allowed, this is completely allowed, of course. There's no restriction for the firm. The market price is not compulsory kasi the firm can choose to charge a price equivalent to the market price. Of course, he might lose customers that way, or he might it might not be strategic for him anyway because he's not going to gain anything if he changes the price, if he's a perfectly competitive firm. But the point is that as a result of price discrimination, the firm is able to increase its revenue because it's able to capture the consumer surplus, transfer the consumer surplus from the consumer, from those that are buying the product, to the firm itself. So it's able to, in a sense, it's able to siphon off the consumer surplus and change it to his personal or to his firm's profit. So this is a transfer. So from in terms of savings, so for the consumer, this becomes part of the profit of the firm. So price discrimination allows the firm to increase its revenues by charging a different price for the same good to different consumers. Okay, so um, price discrimination only works if there is a barrier to other markets for consumers. In other words, if the consumer doesn't have any much of a choice anymore, because if yeah, let's say the firm wants to travel to Saudi Arabia, let's say this is a price discrimination for tickets. Let's say the individual wants to travel to Saudi Arabia. There's only one plane, so his choice is only business class or economy class, but it's going to be on the same plane. So if this is a very wealthy individual and doesn't mind paying additional money because that will, at least will give him some perk. It'll be wider seat. There'll be, silverware instead of plastic utensils. Then, and there's no other plane. So this person will just bite that price, the higher price for the seat in the business class section. So there's a barrier to market for consumers. Hindi naman siya pwedeng lumipat ng eroplano. This is kasi hindi ang lahat ng eroplano hindi naman sabay-sabay na dumadating yan, di ba? They have specific time. So kung pupunta ka sa Dubai halimbawa at gusto mong dumating doon ng alas 12 ng tanghali, malamang isang eroplano lang yan. Let's say may isang yung direct flight. Then isang eroplano lang yan. Hindi sila sabay-sabay na dadating. Okay, so price discrimination is the way to maximize profit by capturing consumer surplus. And this is also, price discrimination is also used by firms to sell more inferior goods by offering discounts. So price discrimination is also a way for firms to say, okay, buy this. Wala namang bibili na tong inferior goods na to kasi hindi ito bibili ng mga higher class na or higher income ko ng mga customers. Then I can sell it to consumers that are more sensitive to price decreases. Ibig sabihin that if I offer this at a discount, the consumers will buy a lot. Okay, so as a result, offering discounts makes, if you think that discounts lessens the profit of the firm, not necessarily, because discounts appeal to a certain segment of the market that is very price sensitive. So as a result of a lower price for the good, in the form of a discount, people will buy more. And so the revenue for the firm will rise. Okay, right now ang daming mga diba? Daming mga sale dahil galing tayo sa pandemic. So one pricing strategy for firms is to reduce the price by offering more discounts, because they're trying to entice, or they think that because we're coming from the pandemic, people are very sensitive to price decreases. So you sabihin, if they see a price or a discount, there's a price decrease, there will be more inclined to buy. Of course, that depends on elasticity. Of course, depends on several factors. So you'd have to examine if this is an effective pricing strategy, perhaps to a certain extent, but not to the full extent that we'd expect, because people have less income than before. All right. So if you recall our discussion about elasticity of demand, so it would make sense to you why firms are offering a lot more discount. SM has a lot more discounts. Diba? Marami silang mga sale, because they're trying to appeal to the elasticity of, or they're trying to use the elasticity concept to increase their revenues. Okay, the time is up, and I thought I would be able to start chapter 12, but apparently I don't. So we'll end here. This is the entire coverage of your second exam on Saturday, which will run from 4 o'clock in the afternoon up to 7 p.m. If you have any questions or would like to clarify anything regarding the problem set, you can do so later today during discussion classes. Okay. All right. So thank you so much. Let me just quickly
Ayun. Sorry, I guess nagkaroon ng naka-mute pala ako kanina. Anyway, the exam no will be held on Saturday 12:30. Okay, hindi 4 to 7 as mentioned in the video. That was last sem kasi. This sem we're going to have a 2-hour exam from 12:30 to 2:30. Same format as last semester, as last exam, no? It's going to be mostly multiple choice, but I'm not going to, I think there are a few items na hindi naka-multiple choice. It's not essay, like ano lang naman, input your own number, ganun. So, ayun. Any possibilities for extension, no? Parang last exam, it has to be coursed through your teaching fellow, and yung teaching fellow na yung may prerogative to extend for you or for the whole class. Okay? So ayun. If there are no more questions, feel free to leave. See you all in our discussion classes later.